want to welcome our brothers and sisters in worship too, and for those of you joining us online, welcome to Edmond First Church of the Nazarene. During our Lenten season, we are continuing in the witnesses of the cross, and my witness this morning are the soldiers. I'm going to be reading from Luke 23, verses 26 through 49. I believe the words will be up on the screen, starting at verse 26. As the soldiers led him away, they seized Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way from the country, and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed for him. Jesus turned and said to them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the childless women, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nurse.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if people do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?" 2 other men, both criminals, were led out with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the School, they crucified him there, along with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. The people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, "He has saved others. Let him save himself if he is the God's Messiah, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine and wine vinegar and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was written a notice above him which read, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God?" he said. "Since you are under the same sentence, we are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." It was now about noon. A darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. For the sun stopped shining, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Jesus called out with his loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." When he had said this, he breathed his last. The centurion, seeing what had happened, praised God and said, "Surely this was a righteous man." When all of the people who had gathered to witness this sight saw what took place, they beat their breasts and went away. But all of those who knew him, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance, watching these things. This morning we're going to talk about the powers and principalities, and more specifically what Jesus did and how Jesus responded to those powers and principalities. First, we need to dive into exactly what powers and principalities are. Walter Wink, a theologian and biblical scholar, says the powers are the systems and the institutions and the structures that weave society into an intricate fabric of power and relationships. They are the material and the spiritual aspects of life that molds the society into a way of life. Ephesians 6, verse 12, also helps us with this. "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." This story depicts an important narrative, that violence, when it's done by the good guy, is okay. I would like to challenge that notion to say that violence is violence. And it plays into the mindset of a power and domination world. From this mentality, if someone doesn't agree with you, you must coerce them to believe what you believe. Most of the time, that coercion is led or is defined by violence. This is seen in the Roman authorities throughout Jesus' time. In fact, the Roman soldiers represent the powers and the principalities of the Roman way. Violence. Violence was the way of life for the Roman soldiers. They were called peacemakers. However, they made peace through war. It's not 100% their fault, though. War was the way of the land. In that time, that's how you knew who was in charge. The way of the land. The guy who beat up all the others. He was in charge. However, the soldiers were just pawns in this greater narrative, the picture of this domination and violence. Not knowing any different, they acted like pawns in the system. Verse 36 through 38 helps us with this, points it out. The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine vinegar and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was written a notice above him which read, "This is the king of the Jews." Earlier, they mocked him by making a crown of thorns for him. What I'm saying about the soldiers is the powers molded into their life so intricately that they just did what they were told. They moved and were shaped by the powers. And so we're not surprised when they come to mock Jesus, who is not responding with violence. And they don't know how to react to that. So you won't get the life of Jesus until you understand that he not only came for our atonement, he not only came to reconcile all of creation back to its rightful purpose, including the powers, but he came to show us a different way of life. Jesus, when he died on the cross, he defeated the powers. He defeated them by showing their way of violence and of coercion and power is a lie. We don't have to fall into the power's trap. We don't have to play into the pool of greed, always wanting more, never being satisfied. We're not pulled into the lie of pleasure, always seeking what is going to offer me more pleasure or what makes me feel good. We don't have to be trapped by fear or lust or hate or anything else that you have on your list that you find entrapped today. You see, like Jesus, the scariest thing to the powers and principalities is meeting a people that aren't afraid of death, because they have no control. They can't threaten or coerce you or scare you anymore. That is why Jesus, also in Mark 8, says, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it." That makes so much more sense now. The powers will do anything to survive, but they have no power when they come in contact with a people that confess that they have no control and want to be saved from all of their lies.